আর এভাবে ইন্টারাকশনের স্কোপই আমি রাখবো না। Okay, let's start again. So as I said here, today we'll see the distinction between slope and elasticity for a straight line demand curve. Now see, we have two demand curve
স্যার
here.
আপনার আওয়াজ কেটে যাচ্ছে।
It's clear now?
নো স্যার।
Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
ইয়েস স্যার।
Okay, so today we'll see the distinction between slope and elasticity for a straight line demand curve. So we can see that here we have one straight line demand curve AB, and due to some reason, say this demand curve AB shifts rightward to CD. So these two demand curves, AB and CD, which are parallel to each other. Now I'm saying that at any given price P, say at this price, corresponding to the AB demand curve, what is the value of elasticity at point E, and what will be the value of elasticity at point F on the CD demand curve. Is the problem clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
we have one demand curve AB here, and due to some reason the demand curve shifted rightward to CD. Now at any given price, say this price, P price, I'm saying what will be the value of elasticity at this point E, and at the same price P, what will be the value of elasticity at point F on the demand curve CD. Can anyone tell me? Yes. So this is origin O, this is point A, and this is point B. Yes, tell me, what is the value of elasticity at point E and point F? You can unmute yourself one by one. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so what will the answer?
Sir, answer might be BE by AE.
So elasticity at point E will be equal to the lower part of the demand curve BE by AE. So that will be equal to this distance by this distance will be equal to, we can write this OP by
Sir, OP
AP.
divided by AP.
Yes. Similarly, what is the value of elasticity at point F corresponding to the CD demand curve?
Sir, DF divided by DC.
Not DC, FC.
FC. Sorry, sir.
So it will be DF divided by FD, FC. So this will be equal to this distance divided by this distance will be equal to OP by
OP by PC.
PC, correct. So which one is higher among this one and this one, these two? কোনটা বড় হবে?
OP divided by PC.
PC টা বড় হবে? You can see that PC, this distance PC is higher than AP. PC is higher than AP. So on the numerator, we
না
have
স্যার
same.
বিই বাই এ টা হবে, ইলাস্ট্রিসিটি অফ টা হবে স্যার ই বিন্দুতে।
Yeah, let's see. So numerator is same for the two. For E, elasticity at point E and elasticity at point F. So the numerator in both the value of elasticity is same, which is OP, but denominator is different. For the first one, we have denominator AP, and here we have PC. And we can also see that PC is higher than AP. So if PC is higher, if you are dividing the same thing by a higher value, so this term will be less than this. So we can write that elasticity at E will be higher than elasticity at point F. Right?
ইয়েস স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
Yes,
So
sir.
we can say that if the two demand curves are parallel to each other, then at any given price P, when the demand curve shifts rightward, its value of elasticity at the same price will decrease. So अगर डिमांड कर्व दाएं तरफ शिफ्ट कर रहा है तो उसका सेम प्राइस में उसका इलास्टिसिटी घटता जाएगा. Similarly, if the demand curve shifts to the left at the same price, उसका इलास्टिसिटी कितना होगा? At this point, call this point G.
ज्यादा होगा
স্যার ज्यादा होगा,
Increase होगा sir.
বেশি হবে স্যার,
इससे ज्यादा
বেশি
होगा.
হবে স্যার, বাড়বে।
So what we have seen that the slope of these demand curves are same, but if the demand curve shifts rightward, उसका elasticity घट जाएगा. If the demand curve shifts to the left, उसका elasticity बढ़ जाएगा at any given price. Fine?
Yes sir.
Okay. Now move to the next one. So what we have seen that if a straight line demand curve, if the demand curve shifts rightward, its elasticity will fall at any given price. Fine?
Yes sir.
Next, we have different slope of the demand curve. Now we have two demand curves, AB and AC. Now both the demand curves are starting from this point A, where it's originating from the vertical axis. So here AB is the original demand curve, and due to some reason, say this AB demand curve rotates to AC demand curve. It rotates counterclockwise manner. ঘড়ির কাঁটার উল্টো দিকে ঘুরলে যেভাবে হবে, এবি ডিমান্ড কার্ভটা এইরকম ঘুরে এসি হয়ে গেছে. ঠিক আছে? তাহলে at any given price P, এবি ডিমান্ড কার্ভের ইলাস্টিসিটি কত হবে আর এসি ডিমান্ড কার্ভের ইলাস্টিসিটি at point F কত হবে? Is the problem clear?
Yes sir, clear.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me what is the difference between you can do it yourself. Draw it on your paper. হয়েছে? Just use the same formula, lower part of the demand curve by upper part of the demand curve. No one. Just as before at point E, for this corresponding to this price P, elasticity at point E will be BE divided by AE, BE divided by AE, which will be equal to OP divided by AP, which is here. Similarly, point F corresponding to point F for the demand curve AC, the value of elasticity will be FC divided by AF, which will be again equal to OP divided by AP. So elasticity at both points E and F are the same. Clear?
Yes, sir.
না স্যার
दोनों पे value of elasticity will be same. Okay?
স্যার আরেকবার বলবেন?
তুমি আগেরটা যদি বুঝে থাকো এটাও না বোঝার মধ্যে কিছু নেই, একই জিনিস. So elasticity at this point will be the lower part of the demand curve, which is FEB divided by the upper part of the demand curve AE. So that will be equal to this distance by this distance will be equal to OP divided by AP. Okay. Similarly, for this point F, the elasticity or for FC demand curve will be OP divided by AP. Fine. So elasticity at point E on AB demand curve is exactly equal to the elasticity at point F on AC demand curve. So if a straight line demand curve rotates, that means if the demand curve becomes more flatter or more steeper like this, but those two demand curves must not intersect each other. যদি এই রকম হয়, এটা চেয়ে এই ডিমান্ড কার্ভ এসি ডিমান্ড কার্ভটা একটু ফ্ল্যাটার হয়ে গেছে, বা এবি ডিমান্ড কার্ভটা যদি রোটেট করে এইভাবে হয় আর একটু স্টিপার হয়ে যায়, তাহলেও সেম প্রাইসে তাদের ভ্যালু অফ ইলাস্টিসিটি সেম থাকবে। যদিও এখানে ডিমান্ড কার্ভের স্লোপ গুলো চেঞ্জ হয়ে গেছে, দ্য স্লোপ হ্যাজ বিন চেঞ্জড, এটার চেয়ে এবি ডিমান্ড কার্ভের চেয়ে স্লোপ ফর এসি ডিমান্ড কার্ভের স্লোপটা কম, কিন্তু তাদের ইলাস্টিসিটি একই আছে। But remember, these two demand curves are not intersecting each other. So if the two demand curves are not intersecting each other and they have different slopes, then they will have the same elasticity at the corresponding to the same price level. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Now the third case, we have two demand curves AB and CD, which those two demand curves are intersecting each other at point E. Okay. Now here, something else will happen. So what will the value of elasticity at point E corresponding to the price P? Point E at point E, what is the value of elasticity corresponding to the AB demand curve? AB demand curve এর জন্য elasticity কত হবে? Now the
BE
lower
by
part,
A.
BE by AE, which will be equal to this distance OP by AP, written here. Fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now look at the CD demand curve. For CD demand curve,
Sir,
at,
DE is divided by CE.
yes, and that will be equal to OP divided by CP.
PC.
सर
Yes.
वॉइस क्लियर नहीं आ रहा सर.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if everybody's unmuted, then voice will automatically not clear. So as AP, this distance is higher than CP. So we can see that this CP is smaller than AP. AP is higher. So elasticity at E for AB demand curve will be বড় হবে না ছোট হবে? এপিটা যেহেতু বড় আছে সুতরাং এই ভ্যালুটা ছোট হবে। So at E for AB demand curve, the value of elasticity will be less than elasticity at E for the CD demand curve. Now look at this demand curve AB. AB demand curve is more steeper. That means the slope of this demand curve will be higher than CD demand curve. Again, we can see that the slope of, the elasticity for AB demand curve will be less. So for the demand curves which are intersecting each other, for these two straight line demand curves which are intersecting each other, the steeper demand curve will have lesser elasticity. যত ডিমান্ড কার্ভটা ফ্ল্যাটার হবে তার ইলাস্টিসিটি তত বাড়বে। যেমন সিডি ডিমান্ড কার্ভটা ফ্ল্যাটার বা তার স্লোপটা কম আছে কিন্তু তাই তার ইলাস্টিসিটিটা বেশি হবে। ফাইন?
Yes, sir.
Answer.
Now there are some determinants of elasticity of demand. I'm just showing only one example and the rest you can read it from the video. You can pause it later. I'll post it in YouTube and you can just pause the video and read the things. Like nature of commodities, for necessity goods like salt, rice, etc., elasticity of demand will be low or relatively inelastic, because for necessity goods, if price changes, the demand might not change very much. से अभी सॉल्ट का प्राइस अगर घट के आधा हो गया, से अभी 20 रुपए किलो सॉल्ट है और तुम्हें से मंथली 1 kg सॉल्ट कंजम्पशन डिमांड होता है, लेकिन अभी अगर सॉल्ट का प्राइस घट के 10 रुपए हो गया तो यू मस्ट नॉट कंज्यूम से 2 kg of salt. That is why the elasticity of necessity goods is relatively inelastic. So demand for those goods does not change much for a change in price. But if the commodities are luxury goods, elasticity of demand will be high or relatively elastic. Change in price for luxurious goods will have a pretty large effect on its demand. Similarly, the other factors, diversity of use, availability of substitutes, consumers' income, longevity of the good or habit of the consumer, these are the different factors that can affect the elasticity of demand. Now come to the next point, cross price elasticity. Okay. Now if someone wants to leave the class, they can leave it whenever you want.
সেকেন্ড পয়েন্টটা আরেকবার বলুন না।
Excellent. হ্যাঁ, কেউ কিছু বলছিলে?
স্যার সেকেন্ড পয়েন্টটা আরেকবার রিপিট করুন না।
সেকেন্ড পয়েন্ট শুরু করবো এখন, ক্রস প্রাইস ইলাস্টিসিটি।
এর আগেরটা
এর আগেরটা কোনটা?
হ্যাঁ স্যার এটা।
এটা তো বললাম, যে এটা বাকিগুলো একই জিনিস, তোমার একটু পড়ে নিও আর কি, ঠিক আছে? এটা বোঝানোর কিছু নেই, লেখাই আছে, ভিডিওতে থাকবে, দেখে পড়ে নিও। Now come to the cross price elasticity. What is cross price elasticity? Can anyone tell me? Anyone? Any guess?
স্যার বলছি, যখন একটি দ্রব্যের দাম অন্য কোনো একটি দ্রব্যের চাহিদাকে প্রভাবিত করে, তখন তাকে পারস্পরিক স্থিতিস্থাপকতা বলে।
Right. So basically, till now, when we are talking about on price elasticity or simply elasticity of demand, we are talking about only one commodity and the price of that commodity itself. Say if we talk about the elasticity of a commodity like say tea, say if price of tea changes, then how the demand for tea, quantity demand of tea change. That is given by on price elasticity or simply the elasticity of demand for tea. Now in cross price elasticity, we have two different commodities. Those commodities may be substitutes or complement or unrelated, whatever they be. So we need minimum two commodities. Say we are taking the third commodity as coffee. Okay. So now if price of coffee changes, for that, and demand price of tea remaining unchanged, if price of coffee changes, for that how demand for tea will be affected, that will be captured by the cross price elasticity. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
मान लो कि दो कमोडिटी है, एक है कॉफी,
हाँ, सर।
एक है चाय। सो अगर कॉफी का दाम में 1% दाम बढ़ गया कॉफी का, देन डिमांड फॉर टी, चाय का डिमांड में कितना परसेंट चेंज होगा, दैट विल बी कैप्चर्ड बाय द क्रॉस प्राइस इलास्टिसिटी. फाइन?
Yes, sir.
ওকে স্যার।
So for that we need two commodities. We are saying this commodity 1 x1 and commodity 2 x2, and price of commodity 2 is p2. Now so EC, elasticity, cross elasticity. C stands for cross. EC is percentage change in quantity demanded for good 1 or commodity 1 divided by percentage change in price of commodity 2. So this is delta x1 by x1 multiplied by 100. This is percentage change in demand for commodity 1 divided by delta P2 by P2 multiplied by 100. That is percentage change in price of commodity 2, not 1. So if this is this P2 or this P's are P1, then we had the previous one, the own price elasticity. Now here we have P2 here. So this is cross price elasticity. So if commodity 2's price changes by 1 percentage point, then by what percentage the demand for commodity 1 changes, that is captured, that is given by cross price elasticity. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Now if the two commodities are tea and coffee, which are substitute to each other, so if price of coffee rises, what will happen to the demand for coffee? Demand for coffee will fall, right? So by law of
Yes,
demand.
sir.
So as demand
Yes,
for
sir.
coffee decreases, demand for tea will rise. So these
Huh.
two
Yes,
are
sir.
substitute goods. So on one hand, your coffee price is rising, so demand for tea is also rising. So both numerator and denominator are positive. So elasticity, cross price elasticity will also be positive. ঠিক আছে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার
The sign of
Yes,
cross
sir.
price elasticity will also be positive. Because when coffee price, which is in the denominator, increases, demand for tea will also rise. So percentage change in tea demand will also rise. So the sign of EC will be positive. So we can say that by simply seeing the value of cross price elasticity, we can say that the two commodities are substitute if EC is positive. Fine.
হ্যাঁ স্যার
Similarly, for complementary goods like tea and sugar, if price of sugar rises, demand for sugar will fall by law of demand, and then demand for tea will.
স্যার কথাটা কেমন কেটে গিয়ে স্যার মাঝখানে কথাটা একটু ব্রেক হয়ে গেল
Okay, mute yourself. For complementary commodities like tea and sugar, if price of sugar rises, if P2 rises, price of sugar, then demand for sugar will fall, and we consume tea only with sugar. So when demand for sugar decreases, demand for tea will also fall. So the denominator increase in price of sugar, this term is positive, but demand for tea decreases, so the numerator will be negative. So the sign of EC will be negative. Fine.
হ্যাঁ স্যার
So again, by seeing that the sign of cross price elasticity as negative, we can tell that the two commodities will be or must be complementary goods. Okay. Now say, can you tell me what the cross price elasticity between say movie ticket and say price of sugar? What will the value of cross price elasticity? Just think a minute.
মুভি টিকিট এন্ড
স্যার এই দুটোর তো কোনো সম্পর্কই নেই
So what will be the cross price elasticity? Movie ticket and price of sugar.
স্যার
স্যার
ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যদি
elasticity
মুভি
zero
টিকিটের
হবে।
হ্যাঁ মুভি টিকিটের দাম বাড়া বা কমার সাথে চায়ের চাহিদা বাড়া বা কমার এরকম কোনো ব্যাপার নেই বা চায়ের দাম বাড়া বা কমার সাথে মুভি টিকিটের চাহিদা বাড়া বা কমার এরকম কোনো ব্যাপার নেই তাই দুটোই স্যার জিরো হবে যেহেতু তাদের কোনো দুটোর মধ্যে কোনো সম্পর্কই নেই
Yes, someone else is trying to say something. Anyone else wants to say something else? অন্য কেউ কিছু বলবে?
না স্যার
If that যদি দুটো কমোডিটির মধ্যে কোনো সম্পর্ক না থাকে তাহলে ধরো চায়ের দাম যখন বাড়লো, if the price of tea increases, the demand for movie does not change. So this term will be zero. There is percentage change in demand for commodity one is zero for say 1% change in price of tea. So the value of cross price elasticity কত হবে?
Zero.
So it will be zero.
জিরো স্যার
Zero by something must be equal to zero. So if the two commodities are unrelated goods like tea and chicken, so the cross price elasticity will be zero. So again, by seeing the value of cross price elasticity, if the cross price elasticity is equals to zero, we can simply say that the two goods must be unrelated, or there is no connection between the two goods. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Next is income elasticity of demand. Just like before, in the previous case, we have percentage change in price here. in the denominator. Now we are having percentage change in income in the denominator. Numerator is the same, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in income. That means if the numerator, if the denominator is equal to 1, then we can say income elasticity is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded. That means we can say that if there is 1% change in your income, what will be the percentage change in quantity demanded? That is given by your income elasticity of demand. Fine?
Yes, sir.
হ্যাঁ স্যার
So what I'm trying to say that say if your income, say ধরা যাক আগে তোমার ইনকাম 100 টাকা ছিল, এখন ইনকাম 1% বেড়ে হলো 101 টাকা। ওকে, আগে ধরা যাক তুমি 10 কেজি কিছু একটা খেতে, এখন ধরা যাক তুমি 11 কেজি খাচ্ছ। So what will be the value of your income elasticity?
ওয়ান
কত
বেড়ে
হবে?
গেল, মানে এক টাকা আয় বাড়ার ফলে তার 1 ইউনিট ভোগটা বেড়ে গেল।
Yes. So what will be the value of income elasticity? So this is Q0.
স্যার 1
1.
স্যার সরি স্যার, ভুল করে বলে গেছি স্যার। 1 ওইটা স্যার চিন্তা করতে করতে এক চিন্তা করতে করতে স্যার গুলিয়ে গেছে, সরি স্যার।
No problem. So this is initial income M0 and this is M1 new income 101. কত হবে?
স্যার প্রাথমিক দাম বাই পরিমাণ ইনটু, সরি হ্যাঁ স্যার, ইনটু প্রাথমিক পরিমাণ বাই দাম।
করো।
স্যার 10 আনসার হবে।
10
হ্যাঁ
পার্সেন্টেজ চেঞ্জ কত হয়েছে? নতুন ডিমান্ড 11, ওল্ড ডিমান্ড 10, কত পার্সেন্ট চেঞ্জ হয়েছে?
1%।
1%. There is a 10% change. New demand Q1 minus old demand divided by old demand. Ito, divide by একশো এক minus একশো divided by একশো, কত হবে? 1/10
স্যার 10 হবে স্যার, 10
multiplied by 100/1. হচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
So the income elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded for 1% change in your income. So if the consumer's income changes by 1 percentage point, by what percent his or her quantity demanded changes? That is given by income elasticity of demand. Fine.
Yes.
Now again, for normal commodities, the value of income elasticity will be positive because when income rises, demand for that commodity must rise as the commodity is normal good. Fine. So denominator positive, numerator will be also positive. So the sign of EM must be positive. Fine. For normal necessity
Yes,
goods,
sir.
the value of EM will be positive, but it will be less than 1 and greater than 0. It will be less than 1 since as the commodities are necessity commodities, as I said, the examples of necessity commodities like say salt or say
Tea.
staple foods like say rice or wheat, whatever. তোমার ইনকাম যদি ডাবল হয়ে যায় তুমি নেক্সট দিন থেকেই ডাবল অ্যামাউন্টে ভাত খেতে বা রুটি খেতে শুরু করে দেবে না। সো তোমার 10% ইনকাম যদি বাড়ে মেবি তুমি 2% তোমার কনজাম্পশন বাড়াবে। দ্যাট ইজ ওয়াই ফর নর্মাল নেসেসিটি কমোডিটিস your the value of income elasticity will be less than 1, but it will be positive, greater than 0. Again, for normal luxury goods, the value of elasticity, income elasticity will be positive and more than 1. More than 1 means if for your income changes by 1%, your demand percentage change in demand will be more than 1%, or we call it more than proportionate change in demand for a change in income. So for normal luxury, EM will be positive, greater than 0, greater than 1. Positive but greater than 1. For inferior commodities, EM will be negative. Inferior commodities means if for those goods for which income, if income increases, the demand for those goods decreases. We call those goods inferior commodities. So for inferior commodities, EM will be negative. Demand falls as income rise. And given goods are also one kind of inferior goods. So for given goods also, EM will be negative. Fine.
Yes, sir. Fine.
Next, move on to elasticity of supply. Just whatever we have done for the elasticity of demand, this is the exactly the same thing. Earlier we had percentage change in quantity demanded. Now we have, instead of this demanded here in numerator, we have percentage change in quantity supplied. আগে এটা quantity demanded ছিল, now this is quantity supplied. নিচে একই percentage change in price. Fine. So here these Q's are representing quantity supplied. Earlier we said these Q's are quantity demanded. Fine. Aki formula, we have the same formula. So price elasticity of supply is the percentage change in quantity supplied of a commodity due to 1% change in its price, other things remaining unchanged. Now for an upward sloping supply curve like these curves, elasticity of supply will be positive. Okay. Now if the supply curve is a straight line like this here, for a straight line supply curve, just take this S0, S0 supply curve here. Take any point on the supply curve, X, point X here. Now draw a vertical line, XY, and look also this supply curve S0, S0 intersecting the horizontal axis at point A. Okay. Now we can say an origin is here, O. So for an upward sloping straight line supply curve, this formula is only if the supply curve is straight line supply curve. For any supply curve, upward sloping supply curve, elasticity, value of elasticity will be positive. But this is a special formula only if it will be applicable only if the straight line is a straight line. The supply curve is a straight line. So for this supply curve S0, S0, at any point on the supply curve, like point X, will be equal to 1 by slope multiplied by price into quantity. And 1 by slope means for this supply curve S0, slope of this will be equal to tangent of this angle which will be equal to xy, this distance, divided by the base ay. So 1 by slope equal to 1 by xy divided by ay, this xy divided by this ay, multiplied by
Sir?
price. Yes.
স্যার বলছি যে আপনি এই যে এই জায়গাটা এখানে লেখা আছে 1/স্লোপ, স্যার এই জায়গাটা যদি কেউ পরীক্ষার সময় বা এমনি সময় কেউ যদি না লিখে ডাইরেক্ট যদি এরকম গ্রাফটা আঁকার পর যে বর্ণনাটা দেওয়ার পরে যখন মানে ইকুয়েশনটা করবে তখন স্যার এরকম ভাবে ডাইরেক্ট লিখে দিলেই হবে না স্যার, যে এ ওয়াই ডিভাইডেড বাই S0x এরকম ভাবে যদি ইকুয়েশনটা করে?
Not S0x, I said this is OY. Just let me finish first. Tomar কোন stream? BA or BCom?
স্যার BA.
Okay.
Sir, BA.
So you have to write. So it will be always better if you explain in this manner. So if you jump just to this thing and the end thing, the examiner might think that you have copied it from your friend. So it's better. It's just nothing much. Just one
Okay,
line
sir.
here. It will always better. Anyway, so this slope is xy divided by ay, here 1 by slope, multiplied by price. So at this point x, the price is this much, this distance, which is exactly equal to this distance xy. So here we have written xy divided by output q. What is q? Q is for point x, q is this distance, as we are measuring output on the horizontal axis. So OY is the amount of output or Q. So here we have written OY. So elasticity will be equal to AY, this distance, divided by OY, this distance. So AY means, if you look at this supply curve, this supply curve is intersecting the horizontal axis at point A. So in the numerator, we have AY, where the supply curve is intersecting the horizontal axis. From that point, the point from which we have drawn the perpendicular from the starting point X. So AY is this distance, divided by OY means the distance of this point Y from the origin, OY. Okay. Now, for this curve S0, AY divided by OY. So AY is smaller than OY. So the elasticity at point X must be less than 1. Fine?
Yes, sir.
So
Fine, sir.
any straight line demand curves starting from the horizontal axis, if this is the supply curve, any straight line supply curve which starts from the horizontal axis at any point on this upward sloping supply curve, the value of elasticity of supply will be less than 1. Because if you start from this point, the elasticity is, this is point Y, this is your Y, and this is point A, and this is point O. So elasticity will be equal to AY divided by OY. So as AY is less than OY, so elasticity of supply will be less than 1. Now take a supply curve which is originating from the origin itself. The supply curve which started from the origin, or straight line supply curve that is starting from the origin itself. তাহলে elasticity কত হবে? Elasticity of supply
1.
আর এই ক্ষেত্রে take any point here. এক্ষেত্রে পয়েন্ট এটা কোথায় হবে? এই পয়েন্ট এটা, because this supply curve started from this point, so point A will be at this point itself. O এর সাথে একই জায়গায় হবে। পয়েন্ট Y টা কোথায় হবে? এরকম জায়গায় হবে পয়েন্ট Y. So AY by OY will be exactly same thing. AY will be equal to OY. So AY divided by OY will be equal to 1. So any point on the straight line supply curve which is originating or starting from the origin, the value of elasticity at any point on this straight line supply curve will be equal to 1. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now tell
Yes,
me
sir.
if the supply curve starts from vertical axis. এক্ষেত্রে supply curve elasticity কত হবে?
Greater than 1.
Sir, greater than 1.
কিভাবে?
স্যার তার কারণ হচ্ছে গিয়ে প্রথমত যে আপনি যে কার্ভটা দেখিয়েছিলেন যে
Take any
হ্যাঁ
point
স্যার
x here. তাহলে পয়েন্ট y টা হচ্ছে এইখানেই। নাও এই কার্ভটা কোথা থেকে হরিজন্টাল অ্যাক্সিসে কোথা থেকে স্টার্ট করছে? এটাকে এরকম পেছন দিকে বাড়িয়ে দাও, তাহলে এইরকম জায়গা হয়ে যাবে পয়েন্ট এটা, তাই তো?
Yes, sir.
স্যার
So elasticity of supply কি আছে? AY divided by OY. তাহলে তোমার AY is this distance, AY divided by OY is this distance. তাহলে AY divided by AY divided by OY কত হবে? গ্রেটার দেন 1 হবে,
Yes.
তাই তো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার
Now we can see the determinants of elasticity of supply. So again, as before, these are the different factors which can affect elasticity of supply. For example, I'm explaining only one, nature of commodity. For industrial commodities, if price rises, its production can be increased very soon. It doesn't take much time. Say price of petrol is increasing, so the petroleum companies can increase the production of petrol overnight. If not overnight, they can increase the production of petrol or diesel, say within a week or within 2 weeks or so, in very short time span. So the supply curve for industrial output will be relatively more elastic. However, for the production of agricultural goods, it can be, if say price of say onion is increasing nowadays, and say price of tomatoes is increasing nowadays, but production of these agricultural commodities cannot be increased overnight. So we have to again start the production of onion and tomatoes, and then after say 3-4 months, when the product crops come up, then only the production of those agricultural commodities can be increased. So that is why the agricultural commodities supply curve are relatively inelastic. Similarly, the time period for short-term short-run supply of commodity may not be changed for a price rise. So in short run, supply curve will be relatively inelastic. However, in long run, supply can be changed for a price change, so it will be relatively elastic. Similarly, nature of commodities, if the commodity is perishable, that means we cannot store the commodities like fruits, etc., or flowers, etc., the supply curve will be relatively inelastic. However, if the commodities can be stored like potatoes or onions, etc., supply curve will be relatively elastic. Also, availability of raw materials, as we said, in the industrial production can be increased very soon. But again, if the availability of raw materials is also matters, because if raw materials are easily available, then the goods supply can be changed for a change in price. So the supply curve of those commodities for which raw materials are easily available, supply curves will be relatively elastic. However, if the raw materials are not available or availability of raw materials is problematic, then the supply curve will be relatively inelastic. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine, sir.
So just 1 minute.